everyone. Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting's coverage of the Sean Spicer White House press briefing, which will begin at any moment now. We got started with the pre-show a bit late because we wanted to keep covering the end of the Comey Senate hearings. If you missed that, you can see it on our Right Side YouTube channel. We got started a little late on that, unfortunately. So if you watch it, you won't see the first part of the hearings, but you'll see like the final 3 hours or so of the Comey Senate hearing. And Sean Spicer will be coming on any minute now. Actually, it was supposed to start the briefing 1 minute ago, but sometimes it comes on late. So this is the pre-show. We'll be doing a post-show after the briefing where you can write in and comment about the briefing and give us your thoughts about the briefing, which we'd like to hear. If you remember yesterday, Sean Spicer actually didn't really talk at his briefing. He introduced Homeland Security Secretary Kelly and Budget Director Mulvaney, and then at the end of the briefing, Sean Spicer just got up and basically just left, and everybody shouted out at him, "Sean, Sean, Sean!" And all the press was upset. But so he'll have 2 days worth of questions to ask, I guess. So real quick, what are some of the things he'll be asked about? Well, reportedly, the American Health Care Act, the replacement bill for Obamacare, at least in the House, is getting a bit closer to maybe passing. There was a new part of the bill that came out today where $8 billion was, the bill added $8 million to help out people with pre-existing conditions get insurance, pay for their insurance in states that reject the... So states in this American Health Care Act are being given the option to not make it so that everybody with pre-existing conditions gets the same health insurance rates as everybody else. But they would have to offer some kind of other alternate insurance, some high-risk pool for such people. And this new version of the bill gives $8 billion extra to those high-risk pools, from what I understand. And a couple of prominent Republicans who had said they weren't going to support the American Health Care Act previously said today they would support it, but there's a number of Republicans who say they won't support it. And I think a couple on the fence, people especially who are in tough districts where they're going to have a hard time getting reelected. So it's right now uncertain whether this current bill, the American Health Care Act, can pass the House. Now, the Senate wouldn't pass this bill in its current form. They would make some big changes to it. But at least right now, I think President Trump would like to get the House to at least pass a version of a replacement bill. And it seems pretty close right now whether that's going to happen or not. So I'm guessing Sean Spicer will be asked about that. That's certainly one thing he'll be asked about. Also, another thing he'll be asked about are a couple tweets President Trump sent out. Was it this morning or last night? Let me look up. This was yesterday, last night. So President Trump sent out a couple tweets last night. Here were the tweets. It's actually it's 2 tweets, but it's one long tweet, so I'll just read you it. He said, FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton in that he gave her a free pass for many bad deeds. The phony Trump-Russia story was an excuse used by Democrats as justification for losing the election. Perhaps Trump just ran a great campaign? So that was President Trump's 2 tweets from last night. And he seemed to be responding. So Hillary Clinton gave an interview yesterday that was televised on the news networks where she seemed to suggest that the reason she lost was that James Comey came out 10 days before the election or whenever it was and said, oh, there are these new emails and they might show something. And she basically blamed Comey and WikiLeaks for costing her the election, especially what Comey and WikiLeaks did just days before the election. And President Trump seemed to be responding to that here. He said, according to him, he said FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton in that he gave her a free pass for her many bad deeds. And he also said the phony Trump-Russia story was an excuse used by the Democrats as justification for losing the election. So it's interesting to see President Trump tweet this because James Comey is the current director of the FBI. So President Trump in this, you could read President Trump here as criticizing James Comey for giving Hillary Clinton a free pass, but he's the current director of the FBI. So that's not something you see all the time. It's like a public criticism of the director of the FBI by the president. So that I have to imagine this will be a number of questions will be asked about these tweets. Also, I find it kind of funny that President Trump referred to himself in the third person and said, perhaps Trump just ran a great campaign. It's possible that part of what he does with these tweets is he just has fun annoying Hillary Clinton. It's possible. So those couple things will be asked. The healthcare bill, what's going on with that? President Trump's tweets last night, what's going on with that? Those are two things that could be asked about today. I think will be asked about in the briefing. And also, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas appeared with President Trump at the White House this morning. They made a joint statement. You can watch that at Right Side on YouTube if you haven't watched it already. We have it posted. And President Trump, I'm sure, will be asked about that. Something President Trump said repeatedly during that appearance was that he thought while the Palestinian-Israeli peace problem was a very tough problem, and that negotiation, he said, was the hardest of them all. He said he thought they could reach a solution. He thought they could reach a solution by which, presumably, it would be a two-state solution, but by which we could have peace between Israel and the Palestinians. So that is something that President Trump has said he really wants to do. We'll see if he can. We'll see what can happen. It's not entirely up to him, of course. Not even mostly up to him, of course. But he's going to do his best. He said he'd be open to be an intermediary between the Palestinians and Israel. So that's another thing Sean Spicer will be asked about. It is right now 2:07. The briefing was supposed to start at 2, sometimes starts a little late. We will go to it right when it happens. If you want to get a comment in before, or you want to comment during the briefing, I can read your comment after the briefing. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let's see. Chris Brown just wrote me. He said, Steve, if the health bill is cheaper and better, why would anyone worry that people in their state wouldn't like it? So I'm trying to figure, I think you're talking about why would representatives worry that people in their state wouldn't like it. Well, one answer to your question is this, you might think, a representative might think, okay, personally, I think in the long run, this bill is better for the country, but I think that my constituents some of my constituents who are on the fence might not be thinking in terms of long run and might be thinking in terms of like, I have a pre-existing condition, this won't cover it as well as Obamacare does. So, the representative's assessment of what's best for the country in the long run and what their constituents might be thinking and what their constituents might vote on are two different things. So that's a way, Chris, that's one way to answer your question. That's a way that a representative might worry that this bill that voting for this bill might hurt them in the election, even though they might think this bill is better and cheaper than Obamacare. But thanks for the question, Chris. Let me just make sure I don't have any emails I am missing from you here. And again, we will have more time at the post show after the briefing. Join us in the post show, and we'll be talking about what Sean Spicer talks about today. Okay, I'm all good on email. Let's see what else will he be asked about in the few minutes we have, if any minutes, before he comes out. Oh, I want to just quickly give you an update that there was a report of an active shooter. What was it? Was it North Texas College? It was a college in Texas. It was North Lake College in Dallas. I'm sorry. There was a report of an active shooter. I just saw reports recently that said it looks like that was a murder-suicide. So but we will keep an eye on that, and if anything new comes up, we'll give it to you. Something very interesting came up in the hearing where FBI Director Comey said that, I believe he said several thousand, but certainly a large number of emails containing classified information were forwarded from Huma Abedin to her husband, Anthony Weiner, who did not have clearance to see these emails. And questions have come up like, why wasn't Huma Abedin prosecuted for this? Or why, I don't know if Hillary Clinton would be subject to prosecution for this. And Ted Cruz actually during the hearing specifically asked about this, and he said, look, if you look at the law, the way the law is written, it does. So Comey said, well, we haven't seen any kind of intent on Huma Abedin to break the law. And then Ted Cruz said, but why does intent matter? The law just says, if there's classified information and you give it to people who aren't supposed to get it, you're subject to prosecution. And and Comey basically said something like, well, the law hasn't been enforced. We don't understand the law that way at the FBI, and it hasn't been enforced that way. And then something Cruz said in response is he said, well, look, even if she didn't have intent, at a place like, if she, given the job she had, shouldn't she just be expected to know what the law is about this stuff? So that I thought was an interesting back and forth, but maybe I'm guessing we'll be hearing a little more about that in the coming hours. I'm sure if you go search conservative websites or Twitter sites, that's something a lot of them will be talking about today. Okay, we are waiting for Sean Spicer's press briefing. Really should be any minute now. Jake will speak in my ear and we will go right to it, and we'll come back after for the post show. Okay, what else might Sean Spicer be asked about today? Let's see. What else was I thinking? Well, he could be asked about the French elections. The French election is coming up pretty soon. It's going to be on Sunday. We'll be covering it here at Right Side Broadcasting for you. And Marine Le Pen, Emmanuel Macron, those are the two candidates. So, maybe Sean Spicer, I have to think before the election at some point, Sean Spicer will be asked the obligatory question, does President Trump support one of the candidates? And Sean Spicer will say, he's not going to take sides. I'm guessing that's what he'll just say. But if he's going to, was today too early to ask that question? I don't know. It could be asked. Other things that could be asked about. So, it's the Congress, House is actually going, I forgot to mention before, the House is, I believe, in 2 days going on an 11-day recess. So, if the White House wants, wants the House to get some momentum from the House approving the American Health Care Act, even if it's not a version that the Senate could ever approve. Presumably the White House wants this voted on before the House goes into recess. And I actually saw reporting yesterday that said President Trump was actually lobbying some of the House members. So President Trump is taking, I believe he was on the phone, he had called some House members, and he's taking an active role in trying to push this bill through the House. So, but if this is going to happen, it's got to happen in the next couple of days, this vote. And it seems like there could be a vote. There might not be a vote. Maybe there's a vote. The House has said the leaders, from what I've heard, the House will only vote on it if they think the leaders of the House think that it's going to pass and they think they have the votes. And it really does seem right now, the House, if they lose 23 Republicans, they can't get the bill passed. And it's close to 23, but it's not at 23. So next day or two, we will see if they actually vote on this. They could vote on it, but that and so I have to imagine that there'll be a bunch of questions for Sean Spicer about, does President Trump think they're going to vote on it? What is it? Has he been actively? Has he been talking to House members? What's his role been in trying to get this bill passed? All of that stuff. What else would I want to say? There was something about this that I wanted to say, and now I can't remember. I cannot remember. Let's see. What else will be discussed? I saw a little story today, and I got to do some more research about it. It's that Puerto Rico seeks a form of bankruptcy. This was a story in the New York Times I had seen. Puerto Rico declared a form of bankruptcy, and I got to read more and research about this. I just saw it before we came on, but I do want to. I do think that could be asked about in the briefing. So just a heads up, that could be asked. I'll do some more research on that, I promise, and have something more intelligent to say on it. I know Puerto Rico hasn't been doing well, but the ins and outs of this latest story, I'm not sure of. I wonder, was Sean Spicer ever asked about the Arkansas executions? So Arkansas has been executing a bunch of people on death row recently because I guess their drugs that they use to execute the people are about to expire, and there's a worry that they won't be able to, for various reasons, get new drugs that are not expired that they're allowed to use. Like, for example, drug companies these days are not allowing a lot of them their drugs to be used for executions. So there've been a bunch of executions. I don't know how many in Arkansas over the last couple weeks. And I saw a lot of news coverage of this, but I wondered, was Sean Spicer ever asked about this? And was he ever asked what the president's position on this was? I don't recall. Maybe you can recall. Let me know if you recall. But that seems like a question that would be reasonable to ask the president, or ask Sean Spicer. So maybe he'll be asked. Anytime now, it's 2:15, so I have to imagine really any minute now Sean Spicer will start. If you would like to write in before then, though, email me, or direct message me on Twitter. That's the best thing, at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me at steve.lookner@rspn.tv. And again, feel free to email me during the briefing, any comments you have on the briefing, any thoughts you have about it, because I will read them on the air after. And join us for the post show after. We'll be right here doing a post show talking about the briefing. Let's see. Oh, Don John T, thank you for the heads up. Don John T says France 24 is showing live coverage of the Le Pen-Macron debate, the two presidential candidates, in English in 45 minutes. That's on YouTube. Oh, we're going to the briefing. Enjoy the briefing. We will see you after for the post show.
Good afternoon. Another busy day here at the White House. As you know, the President has been talking to members of Congress the last few days about the American Health Care Act up through this morning. The Vice President just left a bit ago to meet with some of the lawmakers on Capitol Hill about health care and the rest of the President's legislative agenda. The President was glad to meet this morning with Representatives Long and Upton, who voiced their support for the HCA earlier this morning. It's especially important that we continue to make progress on repealing and replacing Obamacare as rates skyrocket and insurers keep fleeing the market around the country in anticipation of this impending implosion. Earlier this week, Aetna announced that it'll scale back its presence on Obamacare exchanges even further in 2018, withdrawing from the Iowa exchange. Aetna had already cut its participation in the exchanges from 15 states to 4 in 2017. Iowa is going to be hit particularly hard by these recent developments as Medica, the last insurance for most of the state, also announced this week that it'll likely stop selling individual health care policies in the state, which will affect tens of thousands of Americans. With reports like these seemingly coming every day, it couldn't be clearer that it's time for action on health care. We're glad that so many members are with us and look forward to welcoming even more on board. Also earlier today, the president dropped by an event focusing on school choice that was hosted by the Vice President and Secretary DeVos, with students ranging from kindergarten to high school. Most of the students who visited the White House today are some of the thousands of local children who will benefit from the 3-year extension of the DC School Choice Scholarship secured by the president and congressional allies in the budget deal. The District of Columbia's Opportunity Scholarship Program, which was launched in 2004, provides vouchers to DC students whose family either receive benefits under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, or earn less than 185% of the federal poverty level. And this program gets results. Last year, 69% of DC public school students graduated from high school. That's compared to an incredible 98% of the DC scholarship students who received their high school diplomas last year. Funding for the Opportunity Scholarship was one of our priorities during these budget negotiations, and the Trump administration is glad to have ensured that the program's extension was taken care of through this appropriations bill, on top of the increases in military spending and funding for border security. Today, the president welcomed the president of the Palestinian Authority of the White House for an official visit. The visit stemmed from a phone call the two leaders had on March 10th when President Trump invited President Abbas to Washington so they could discuss in person ways to move forward on a comprehensive agreement that would end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The two leaders made their own statements just a little bit ago, but to give you a few additional details, some of the topics that were discussed during their meeting and the lunch were advancing the Israeli-Palestinian peace, preventing incitements to violence, particularly in media outlets directly associated with Palestinian Authority, strengthening efforts to combat terrorism, including defeating ISIS, measures to empower the Palestinian economy and provide economic opportunity for the Palestinian people. And additionally, the president raised concerns about the payments to Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails who have committed acts of terror and to their families, and emphasized the need to resolve this issue. Later this evening, the president, along with the vice president, Mrs. Pence, will host members of the White House Evangelical Advisory Board in the residence for a discussion, prayer, and dinner. The president is proud to welcome these faith leaders to the White House for the first time and thank them for their steadfast support ahead of the National Day of Prayer, which is tomorrow. Later tonight, the Vice President will also deliver a keynote address at the Susan B. Anthony List's 2017 Campaign for Life Gala. The Vice President's office has more details on that. And with that, take your questions. Ken.
Sean, on healthcare, does the President feel like we've reached an inflection point here with the House? Is this a make or break moment in terms of getting the bill through the House? And what precisely is the President doing, and what arguments is he making to members on why they should support this bill?
Well, I think he's making several points. One is the need that Obamacare is failing, and that, as I just mentioned with Aetna, in so many cases around the country, the need to have a provider is becoming greater and greater. Two is that costs are out of control. These are two basic tenets that you've heard us talk about. But I think overall the efforts that were made and continue, and especially the effort this morning with Congressman Long and Upton, help bring more people into this effort, make it even a stronger bill, and ensure that Americans have a healthcare system that gets them the care that they need at a price that's affordable.
Is this a now or never kind of moment, though, with the bill in terms of the House?
I don't want to put it there. I'm not. I mean, the president's made it clear before that he's not trying to set a date certain. Obviously, that's up to the Speaker and the House leadership to determine when that time is appropriate. But as you have seen, we continue to move closer and closer to that time. And the number of members who are supporting it continues to grow further and further, and I think that's a very promising sign. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Yesterday, the president tweeted that FBI Director James Comey gave Hillary Clinton a, quote, free pass for many bad deeds. Is the president comfortable having an FBI director that gives out free passes serve during his administration?
The president has confidence in the director, but I think clearly his point was after some of the comments that were made yesterday regarding the reason for the outcome of the election. I think he just wanted to make it clear what exactly happened.
On healthcare, the president appears to be directly involved behind the scenes. How much responsibility does the president plan to take for the outcome of the vote if it does occur this week?
Well, I think if we have a vote, which is looking greater and greater every day, but again, I'm not going to get ahead of the House leadership in deciding when that is. My assumption is the House leaders will call that when that number is will put us over the top. And I feel like, again, you saw 2 votes come down today. The president's been on the phone constantly. The vice president, the chief of staff, other members of the legislative affairs team calling members, talking to them, hearing their concerns. But I think we've made this an unbelievable bill and an unbelievable replacement for Obamacare, which is failing. And that's what we've sought to do from the beginning. Yeah.
John, there was a report in Politico yesterday that seemed pretty well sourced, indicating that President Trump plans to sign an executive order tomorrow in the name of religious freedom. Will the president sign a religious freedom executive order tomorrow, and will it enable discrimination against LGBT people?
So I know we've talked about EOs for a long time, executive orders. Tomorrow is National Day of Prayer. There'll be a proclamation the president will sign. We're looking forward to having religious leaders from multitude of backgrounds come to the White House and celebrate this day with us. But I've never gotten ahead of executive orders, and I'm not going to.
Can't deny that the executive order that the president is a friend of the LGBT community. Isn't that a lie?
I answered the question. Thank you.
Try to be a friend of the LGBT community if the president isn't considering this executive order.
Blake.
Thanks, Sean. I want to get your reaction to former President Obama. He tweeted yesterday after Jimmy Kimmel's monologue that went viral, the monologue you've probably seen about his child. Kimmel talked about the need to cover pre-existing conditions, the need for funding for the NIH, and Mr. Obama said, quote, "Well said, Jimmy, that's exactly why we fought so hard for the ACA and why we need to protect it for kids like Billy." Your reaction to both of them would be what?
Well, I think we share that concern for the Kimmel's child as well as any child that needs care. And that's frankly why the president fought so hard to improve the bill like he did this morning, to make sure that there was that extra layer of protection for anybody with a pre-existing condition, no matter their stage in life. That's why we're fighting so hard for this. But I think most importantly, and I think at the end of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, he said that there is no, we need to have some of these things that aren't Republican or Democrat, and that they're American policies. And I think that's what the president is fighting for right now, is to make sure that we have a healthcare system that doesn't matter where you live or your background, that it takes care of people. We're making sure right now, we've talked about this endlessly over the last month or so, but we've got a healthcare system that's not doing what it's supposed to. It's failing. It's costing people too much. It's giving people a card, not coverage. And what the president's trying to do by working with these members of Congress is to make sure that we have the strongest possible healthcare system that covers them, that gives them the care that they need, that allows them to go see a doctor, that covers pre-existing conditions, and does so in a way that's not going to be out of range and unaffordable for most Americans.
And I want to ask you about what Hillary Clinton said yesterday. She said, quote, "If the election had been on October 27th, I would be your president." And on the Hill today, James Comey testifying said, quote, speaking about October 28th, he said, "Would you speak or would you conceal?" James Comey make the right decision on October 28th?
Well, look, I'm a Patriots fan, and I think if games ended in the third quarter, there would have been a different team here last week. But you play a game 4 quarters, you play an election until election day. So, well, with all due respect to her, that's not how it works. You don't get to pick the day the election's on. It's set by the Constitution. The president won 306 electoral votes, and I think there's been plenty of analysis on the election and where people chose to spend their time and their resources and their messaging. And I think it's somewhat sad that we're still debating why the president won in the fashion that he did.
Speak or conceal? Did he make the correct decision?
I'm not going to. I think, with respect to the election, I think the American people made their decision. Amen.
Thanks, John. There's been a lot of focus recently on Ivanka Trump's role in this White House. Can you clarify for us what exactly their areas of responsibility are here, and what her qualifications are for those responsibilities?
Sure. I mean, I think Ivanka has built in a very successful business. She's been working with women to talk about empowerment and education for quite some time. It's a passion of hers. And I think for her to bring both her business acumen and success, her passion for women, empowerment and education, and entrance into areas that they haven't been able to get to, is one of the reasons that Chancellor Merkel reached out to her and asked her to come to the W20 summit, because I think she can use her voice to help bring attention to issues. She can use her resources and knowledge of individuals to help break down some barriers that young women, older women face in education and business. That's where she has always had her passion. That's what she's working on now.
Responsibilities here. For example, the New York Times reported this morning that she has a weekly meeting with the Treasury Secretary. What's that meeting?
Again, I think that I've mentioned it. I think there's a lot of times where she's meeting with folks to understand an issue, to get up to speed. But I think her primary focus, what she's always said, where her passion is, where her time is going to be spent, is figuring out how to empower women, how to break down barriers for women, whether that's in small business, in education, women, young women in poverty or families, and figuring out how to help them. But of course, I mean, part of that is to have conversations with people in government and figure out what programs exist where we can help additional folks using government or fix a government program that might be not properly being utilized. But there's a lot of that. Matt.
Thanks, John. Back to healthcare. An analysis from AARP showed that the sickest patients will pay nearly $26,000 a year in premiums under the new healthcare law, and that $8 billion, which was included in that amendment this morning, is not nearly enough to lower those costs. So I'm wondering, how does that, which would be a major premium hike on the sickest patients, square with the president's promise to both lower premiums and take care of those with pre-existing conditions?
So it sounds interesting to me that there are so many variables that are unknown that to make an analysis of that level of precision, it seems almost impossible. Hold on, let me give me an example. So right now, pre-existing conditions are covered in the bill. They've always have been. We've talked about that before. States have the right to receive a waiver. If someone has continuous coverage, that's never going to be an issue. Regardless of no circumstance, does anyone with continuous coverage would ever have a problem with pre-existing continuous. If someone chose not to have coverage for 63 days or more, and they were in a state that opted out, and they had a pre-existing condition, and they were put into a high-risk pool, then we've allocated an additional $8 billion over 5 years to help drive down those costs. So for someone to know how many people that is, what number of states are going to receive a waiver, ask for and receive a waiver, is literally impossible at this point. So to do an analysis of any level of factual basis would be literally out of not an impossible thing.
Follow-up questions.
Okay.
One, would the president prefer, does he have a preference as to whether or not states opt out, given that option? And two, yes or no, will people with pre-existing conditions pay higher premiums under this bill than they currently do?
I think everything that we've done, including the additional $8 billion this year, have everything that I've seen shows that the cost curve goes down for them in a lot of ways. So I would, if you have pre-existing conditions, and again, remember what a small pool that is. If you have a pre-existing condition currently, the bill protects you. The only factor would be is if you live in a state that potentially has asked for a waiver and then is subsequently granted it, and if you've gone 63 days without continuous coverage. So if you have continuous coverage, if you live in a state, it'll never ever be a factor. But the president has worked to make sure that in every single scenario, everybody, he has kept true to his word that pre-existing conditions are covered and that the cost curve continues to bend down. And so
Then on that other question, the congressman this morning from Michigan was saying he's confident from conversations with his governor
Right.
that his state will not ask for a waiver.
Great.
Does the president have a preference as to whether or not states ask for waivers?
the president's preference, and the president believes in states' rights, number one. Number two, his not just preference, his goal is to make sure, as he stated repeatedly, is that pre-existing conditions are covered, care coverage goes up, and costs go down. Those are the principles that continue to guide him. Cecilia.
Thank you. I want to go back to Director Comey on the Hill today and some things he said about Russia. One of the things that he said was the Russian government is still involved in American politics. Is that the view of this White House?
I think that's the view of the FBI. I mean, I'm not.
Is that different than the White House?
I don't. I mean, we rely on them and the rest of the intelligence community to provide the president with updates on what they're learning. So it's not. We don't. It doesn't go that way. The director and the intelligence committee update the president on all of the threats that the United States faces and all of the intelligence activity that need to be briefed.
And in that particular one, does then he accept that?
Well, again, I don't know what he is briefed the president. I'm not trying to be coy on this, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know what he has recently briefed or how. I know that the question that was asked during the testimony, I don't know what new evidence beyond what they shared with the president in December has happened between then and now.
Okay, there's one more thing on that front. He called Russia, quote, the greatest threat of any nation on earth. Is that something the president agrees with?
I think the president's been very clear that he thinks the threat that North Korea poses with the potential nuclear weapon that has range capacity is something that he finds to be threatening to the lives of American and our allies. Alexis?
I have two healthcare questions.
Okay.
Can I follow up on what you were saying about the president's conversation with Congressman Upton? Until yesterday, the president thought there was sufficient funding, and Congressman Upton came to him and suggested $8 billion more. You were just saying that it's impossible to estimate what would be needed. My question is, why did the president think that there was sufficient protection for those individuals who have pre-existing health conditions yesterday, but today he now believes $8 billion will cover it? What persuaded him that the number that he had embraced yesterday was not sufficient and that $8 billion is going to do it?
So in this particular case, Congressman Upton, I think Congressman Long addressed it, that he, through a series of conversations that he had with the president, shared with the president a concern that he had in their shared goal of covering pre-existing conditions. The president, as Congressman Long discussed outside, expressed that the president expressed to him that the pre-existing conditions were covered and went through the various scenarios. Congressman Long felt as though there were scenarios in which potentially the high-risk pool, it wasn't a question of coverage, it was a question of cost. And so the president engaged in a conversation with them, and through some of the analysis that Congressman Upton and Congressman Long had done, the president agreed that if we add an additional safety net, which is frankly what that is, not on the coverage but on the cost, that could ensure that the cost curve further gets bent downward. And the president agreed, because at the end of the day, look, the president's talked about this from the beginning, that he wants to work with members to make it the strongest possible bill, to have the strongest outcome for the American people in a healthcare system in which both the cost continues to go down. And I think that's one point, Alexis, that we keep forgetting in this discussion. With what we're trying to do, it's not just replace Obamacare. Obamacare is dying on the vine. The costs are spiraling out of control, deductibles are going up, and carriers, again, this isn't a theoretical discussion. Aetna, as we just discussed, is pulling out of states, and counties around the country are now going down to one, in some cases, zero choices. So this isn't a question of just replacing something. We are actually at a point where if we don't do something, some people in this country will have no options for coverage. We've got to do something, and that's where the president has been willing to work with members, pick up the phone, and figure out how do we get this done to make sure that every American's got the coverage that they need.
Also ask about the next step. There are members of the House who are concerned on the Republican side that they could vote for something that will change dramatically in the Senate. What is the president's message to those members who are concerned about that? Is he going to press the Senate to embrace whatever may or may not come out, but you hope may come out of the House?
Well, of course.
To be adopted by the Senate in whole.
Well, I think the legislative process works its will. The Senate will take up the House bill, and then they'll go to conference. And then that's when both sides, again, will have an opportunity to discuss any potential changes. The president feels really good about how this bill has evolved, how much stronger it's become to achieve the goals that he set out. And he'll continue to work with Leader McConnell and others when it gets to the Senate to make sure that there could be issues that come up between now and then, but our number one goal is to get it out of the House, focus, and then have those conversations with the Senate, and then go to conference. But for right now, and in a perfect world, they would just take it straight up and we would go, but I have a feeling the Senate's going to want to say at this, so we'll go from there. John.
Thanks so much. Chairman Upton and Congressman Long were very pleased, as we heard before, with this legislative fix. They say they've turned their no's into yeses.
That's right.
Do you believe there's additional legislative fixes that are still to come before this bill actually hits the House floor?
The president's always said he's willing to hear ideas. This is a question for Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy and Congressman Scalise in terms of when's the appropriate time. If they feel that they've gotten to a place where they have the votes necessary to take it to the floor based on the number of suggestions and fixes and updates, then that'll be up to them. But I'm not going to prejudge. In this case, through those conversations, and the president has constantly been on the phone for the last several days and continues to do so to hear members' issues and concerns. And so if there's a point, but I think we're getting to that number closer and closer, but that will be ultimately a decision that Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy have to make.
On timing, I've heard different things from the president over the course of the past few weeks. At one point, I heard the president say he wants the bill to be taken up now. Other times, it's not important, just get the bill right. What's your view? Is it very important, as far as the administration is concerned, that this bill vote take place sooner rather than later?
Well, obviously, the sooner the better, right? But we don't want to put it up for a vote. I mean, the goal is to pass it, which we continue to get closer and closer to every day. But you don't want to put it up, and not move forward. So the president wants to make sure that the leadership is confident that they can pass the bill, and I think he's done everything he can in terms of speaking with members of the House to get there. But ultimately, that's going to be their decision to do it. And I think we continue to feel optimistic about the direction that we've seen the legislation go. Mike.
I wanted to revisit the president's comments and his tweets about the omnibus spending bill. He campaigned on his business record as on his ability to make good deals, make better deals than politicians in the past have. Does the president view the spending bill as a good deal?
Yes. Chris.
Sean. Thank you. Sean, can you say definitively that no one living with a pre-existing condition will pay more under the Upton Amendment if it does get passed?
I think we've done everything we can to do that. And every measure that the president has taken further not only ensures that people with pre-existing conditions get covered in every scenario, but does so in a way that bends the cost curve down.
But can you guarantee it?
Well, I mean, I think, with all due respect, to answer a question to say, can I guarantee something? But I can tell you that every single thing that the president has done, including the action that he took this morning to work with members of Congress, does everything by every account to bend the cost curve down, to help anybody that would potentially fall into that small group of individuals to bend the cost curve down who have pre-existing conditions. So the answer, is yes, that we have done every single thing possible to get that down and to ensure that, number one, that potential is as small as possible, because the bill covers people with pre-existing conditions, number one. Number two, it does everything to ensure that if a state seeks a waiver, that they are still covered. But it looks at every single possibility to ensure that people get the care that they need.
And is there a concern? You criticized former President Obama rushing through his health care plan. Is this not being rushed through? This legislation hasn't even been scored yet by the CBO, for example, or put up for public debate. This latest piece of legislation.
Well, every piece of legislation evolves as it goes through the process. We saw that this morning. I think we had a piece that makes it even a stronger bill. But the underlying principles that we have been talking about have been something that Republicans have been talking about and have had the contours of for the last 7 years. This was something that has been part of the process for a long time.
Does he expect to see a vote this week?
The president, I've mentioned this 5 times, the president expects to see a vote when the speaker and the leader and the whip call a vote because they believe they have the votes to go on. John?
Sean, it looks like we're on the precipice of a vote on the omnibus spending bill. Senator Lindsey Graham said a short time ago that Republicans got their clocks cleaned on this bill. Looks like as many as 100 House Republicans will vote against it. How do you square that with the pronouncements out of this White House that this was a big win for Republicans?
I think Director Mulvaney addressed that extensively yesterday. But to get back to Mike's point, this is a great deal for the president. He got $21 billion in military funding. That is a huge campaign pledge that he made very clearly to modernize and update the military. It fully funds the largest military pay raise in 6 years. It ends the Obama-era sequestration policy of pairing increases of domestic spending for every dollar to dollar. It got $1.52 billion in border security, which is the first installment in securing our nation's southern border. It get $1.3 billion to coal miners, which delivers on another promise that he made. There's no Obamacare bailout, the CSR payments, which was something that the Democrats want on. There's a 3-year extension of the DC Opportunity Scholarship Choice, which you saw the children that will benefit from that this morning. It increases funds for opioid crisis. It eliminates rescinds and terminates 150 programs or initiatives. I think what you look, when, and Director Mulvaney laid this out yesterday, when you look at what the president came forward with a month or so ago and said, these are my priorities, he got what he asked for. And I think that's big. So this is the president feels very good about what he got. And again, I think it's important to underscore 2 points. Number one, in the Senate, we needed 60 votes. This had to be a bipartisan action because it is a spending bill. So therefore, we needed to get Democratic votes with us. But if you look at, as Director Mulvaney pointed out yesterday, it used to be a 1-for-1 spending increase if we wanted military increase. We got that down to $1 to 20 cents. That is a huge win for the president. He negotiated a fairly strong deal when it comes to what they got versus what we got. The other thing that's important to understand is that this is just the final 5 months of FY18. Any president coming into office wouldn't get the first shot at a budget until the end of September of the year after they got elected. So in theory, he got to push for his priorities: military spending, border security, DC schools, all of the things I mentioned, right out of the gate. And for the last 5 months of this fiscal year, something that should have happened during the Obama administration, he got his priorities, a down payment on them.
Quick second topic, if I could. This is at least the fourth administration in a row that has come in with optimistic predictions of how Middle East peace will go. What's going to be different this time?
Well, I think the man is different. You look at what the president's diplomacy style is paying dividends, whether it's getting someone who is held for years in Egypt released, whether it's the action that China's taken. The relationships and the foundation that the president is rebuilding are going to pay huge dividends for this country in terms of our economic interests, our national security interests. But this president's style is one to develop a personal bond with individuals, and I think you saw that today with President Abbas, him talking so kindly about the president. You saw that the relationship that exists and is only getting stronger between him and Prime Minister Netanyahu. You have two individuals who, because of this president, are increasing their desire for peace. You've got an individual in President Xi in China that has taken fairly significant action to help come work with the United States, especially with respect to our desire to end the threat in North Korea. That has been unprecedented. The president's ability to connect with an individual, to work with them towards a shared goal, to have backroom diplomacy, is something that is going to continue to pay dividends and get results for this country.
Can
Charlie.
I follow up on John's question, please?
Charlie.
In January, the president did an interview deriding the little toy walls on the southern border. That's a quote. And said, I don't know why they're even wasting their time. Why is the government focused so much on existing border security measures rather than fighting for the wall that he promised that he would build?
Thank you for an opportunity to show you some things. So if I can get the first image up. You asked. No. But you literally could not have helped me out. This is what exists right now throughout our country. This is the kind of barrier that exists throughout the country. You see a place where cars can literally create little things and drive over. You've got places that can get burrowed under. That one they've cut through. That one doesn't seem to be too effective at keeping people in it. This is what those images represent our nation's current border security. According to a GA report from earlier this year, from fiscal year 2010 to fiscal year 2015, the Customs and Border Patrol recorded a total of 9,287 breaches in pedestrian fencing at an average cost of $784 per breach to repair, right? So every time that they cut through, break through, put something over, it's costing just under $1,000 for us to go out and have to fix. Now to the next slide. You had no idea you were getting this, did you? So the bill that is about to get passed, Title VI, which pertains to the Department of Homeland Security's funding on additional appropriation, states that an additional $497.4 million, quote, for procurement, construction, and improvements. Of that total, $341.2 $2 million are to, quote, and this is literally what it says in the bill, to replace approximately 40 miles of existing primary pedestrian and vehicle border fencing along the southwest border using previously deployed and operationally effective designs such as currently deployed steel bollard designs that prioritize agent safety. So that's your answer, Charlie. Hold on. So hold on. Let me just, we have a porous border right now with broken fences, things that can be cut through, places that can just literally be driven over. And to replace this with 20-foot high Ballard wall will protect our country, something that the DHS has designated the most effective way to do this. So that's what we got out of this bill.
Just one question about the photos. Are those photos of fences or walls?
That is called a Ballard wall. That is called a levee wall.
So that's the wall that
No.
promised?
No. There are various types of walls that can be built. Under the legislation that was just passed, it allows us to do that. As we've mentioned, that is called a levee wall on the left. That is called a Ballard wall. Huh?
So that's not a wall, it's a levee wall?
That's what it's actually called. That's the name of it. It is called for
Fencing, not wall.
In this current bill, it allows us to do the following. So to be clear, in several areas along our southern border, we have what was in the first slide, which are areas in which someone can literally cut through with a pair of wire cutters or put a little barrier over that a car can drive over the top. Okay? What we've done is taken the tools that we have to replace, and if you look at that one in particular, you've got a chain link fence is what is currently at our southern border. That is literally down there now. We are able to go in there and instead of having a chain link fence, replace it with that Ballard wall. That's what it is.
That's not the wall the president promised.
Hold on. Hold on, Jim. I'm going to take turns, but just to be clear, because Charlie asked the same thing, so I'll give you a little help on this one. That this is the 2017 budget. The president, this is a down payment on what the president is going to prioritize in the 2018 budget that starts October 1st. And as I mentioned to John Roberts, the idea that we even got a shot at this is something that should have been done last term under President Obama. We have an opportunity to use the last 5 months of the FY17 budget to get the president's priorities jump-started. So he is using the current bill to get his priorities moving and put it down. To answer the question, it is currently being built in Naco, Arizona, Sunland Park, New Mexico, and we are going to be starting to do this in San Diego, El Paso, and Rio Grande Valley.
Basically just telling supporters, the president's supporters, to be satisfied with this existing tough guy fencing until he's ready to build the wall.
No, what I'm telling anybody is that the president said he was going to build a wall, and he's doing it. He's using the best technology and what the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary John Kelly says is the most effective way to keep people out, to stop drugs, to stop cartels, to stop human trafficking, and to prevent illegal immigration. That's what I'm telling you.
Today and said he wants to see East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. Yesterday, Vice President Pence said you're still looking at moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. What is the White House view on those remarks? I mean, we didn't hear anything from President Trump in response to that.
I think the Vice President, as you noted, commented yesterday that it's still something that is being discussed and considered by the President. It'll continue to be a discussion that he has with both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas, but obviously we're not going to.
Palestinian portion.
I'm not going to. I will. They had a series of private discussions. That is why the president is able to effectively get things done for this country, is to not negotiate out in public. He's going to continue to have discussions with Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Abbas, moving forward, and he feels confident about where that relationship was and developments that were made today.
He doesn't object to what President Abbas said. It's just not decided.
It's not a question of not decided. I'm not going to negotiate what they are talking about in private from this podium. So that's
why I'm asking.
I understand it. I'm just telling you that we are not going to negotiate from the podium. Jim.
Just to follow up on the president's meeting with Abbas, he did say at one point, frankly, talking about Middle East peace and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, maybe it's not as difficult as people have thought. Why does he believe that arguably the toughest foreign policy challenge in our lifetime may not be as difficult as people have thought?
I think both of these leaders have very publicly expressed the confidence they have in the president's negotiating skills, in the president's desire to work to get peace. the relationship that he's built with them individually and the trust and respect that they have for him. And I think that he, in discussions with them, in private discussions with them, feels very optimistic about the shared goal that everybody has. Obviously, there's a lot of issues that have to get covered, but the president understands that they respect his ability to want to get this done, his relationships and respect that have been developed, and I think this is something that he really wants to have happen.
And back to healthcare, why even monkey around with pre-existing conditions? That's the most popular thing in Obamacare. Why are you guys spinning your wheels, messing around with pre-existing conditions?
I wouldn't call it messing around, or however you phrased it. I think the president wants to do everything.
Right now, people with pre-existing conditions are covered. They're not discriminated against.
No, just hold on.
You're going to change to a system where who the hell knows what's going to happen? It depends on what state they live in. If they live in this state over here, that governor may seek a waiver, and all of a sudden they're thrown into this system where hopefully that fund is going to cover their pre-existing conditions. It is a big change for people who live with those kinds of illnesses, is it not?
Well, look, the big change, I guess we have a very different view of this, because my view, and I think the president's view, is that Obamacare, if you have a pre-existing condition and you no longer have a health care provider, and your premiums or deductible are going through the roof, then you don't have coverage. And we just read it out. I mean, if you have
throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
No. What I'm saying to you right now,
no. Because you're saying it's not working. But then why change pre-existing conditions?
We're not. No, we're strengthening. I think, look, we have done everything to do to not only strengthen, but to guarantee.
If the governor can say, here's my waiver and no more
sure
pre-existing
you can, Jim.
conditions.
I walked through this. But I think the fundamental point that seems to be getting lost is that if you have Obamacare right now, in case after case, you are losing it. So if you have a pre-existing condition, and you have a card that says Obamacare, but no one will see you or you can't afford it, then you don't have coverage.
Why not fix that?
We are.
Fix that.
We're guaranteeing it, but I don't know how much.
Why does
we have literally
the component have to be altered? Why not just keep that
the
protection
president
in
has made it
place?
very clear that pre-existing conditions are covered in the bill under every scenario. I don't know how much clearer we can state it.
So anybody who has a pre-existing condition under Trump care, they're going to be fine?
Yes.
Without question.
There you go.
Sean. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. Want to follow up on healthcare. I just want to know why the White House is pushing so hard for a vote on this healthcare bill at a time when, as you just said a few minutes ago, it's literally impossible to analyze its impact on the healthcare system. Why not wait for that analysis to come out?
The vote is going to happen, as I've said like 8 times now, when the Speaker and the Majority Leader and the Majority Whip want to. Our job is to work as hard as we can to work with members of Congress who want to see their healthcare system improved. That's what we're doing. That's what we've done. And so it'll be up to the House leadership to decide when to vote. Zeke.
2 questions for you. One following on Jordan real quick. You just made a guarantee to the American people on behalf of the president regarding pre-existing conditions, but you told Matt and Jordan earlier that literally impossible to know the impact of this law. So how can you make that guarantee?
No. They were asking about cost. The president has made it very clear on numerous occasions that he's going to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered.
And the White House has the analysis to back that up, is what you're saying?
In every scenario, yes.
And then just follow up on something that Director Mulvaney said yesterday regarding the president's tweet about calling for a good shutdown potentially in September. He said the reason the president sent that tweet was he was frustrated by Democrats spiking the football and thereby poisoning the well for future negotiations. The president, when he was campaigning, said he was going to win for all Americans. Why did the president's feelings matter at all?
And it's the process that I think he's frustrated with, because he does want to win for every American, and I think that's why he's fought so hard for this. But you've seen time and time again, Democrats obstruct routine things that they supposedly are for, but do everything they can to obstruct. I think the president is frustrated with the system. He's talked about how archaic it is in the Senate in particular, because he is out there working to try to get, whether it's health care or tax reform or his cabinet, through the Senate. There are various things that the president's trying to do that are issues when he's having conversations with members of the Senate or the House who will say, I'm with you on this great idea, but I just can't vote with you. He is, I think, understandably frustrated with how hard he's working to achieve the promises, goals, and objectives that he set out with the American people to make the country better and to deal with multiple layers of obstructionism. Sarah.
Thanks, John. So you've cited this 60 vote threshold as a reason why funding for the wall wasn't pursued in this spending bill, but what's going to be different in September? I mean, presumably the legislative conditions would be the same, so what will change between now and September to give you confidence that we'll get funding for the border wall then?
Well, I think there's multiple things. When you come in, this CR, there was a lot that was already carried over from last time in terms of because it's not just a continuing resolution, it's a total omnibus package, meaning that there are multiple bills that are part of the underlying package that already have increases or underlying policy in them from the previous fiscal year, from the previous Congress, from the previous administration. This bill will reflect in 2018 the president's priorities in working with the Republican House and Senate. Thank you guys very much. See you tomorrow in New York. Have a good one.
Hello, welcome back. That was the White House press briefing with Press Secretary Sean Spicer. This is the post show for the briefing here at Right Side Broadcasting. We cover all the briefings. We do a pre-show and a post show. Who else does that? We do. We think you want it, so we do it. We do it for you. I'm Steve Lookner. I am here at Right Side Studios. So let's get into this. The main topic of discussion today in the briefing was this health bill, the American Health Care Act. This is the proposed replacement for Obamacare. And as you remember, a couple of months, was it a month ago around then, that there was going to be a vote on it in the House, and then the bill was pulled, and the House leadership pulled the bill, and there was no vote. Well, it's looking now like there might be a vote very, very soon on this bill. In fact, I just saw a tweet, if I can call it up here. Let's see if I can find it. I believe it was from Josh Jossi. Can I find it? Yes, Josh Jossi, who is at Politico, he said a senior administration official says a healthcare vote is likely for Thursday night, tomorrow night. Now, wait, I don't even remember what day it is. I honestly don't remember if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, Jake. I literally don't remember. Today's Wednesday, right? Yes, it is. I hope. It's Wednesday. So tomorrow is Thursday, because today is Wednesday. And so the House goes on recess starting Friday. And they go on recess, I believe, for 11 days. So the White House would love to get this bill voted on and passed in the House before recess. I did read an interesting thing. You know, I have my problems with the New York Times. But one interesting thought I saw in the New York Times today was, if the White House wants to get this bill passed by the House, it's better to try to get it done before recess than after. Not only because it's sooner rather than later, but also there's this possibility that House members in House Republicans in districts that aren't like totally, like 90 to 10 Republican districts, they might go home and hear a lot of negative feedback from constituents from this. And just even the conservative ones, they might hear negative feedback from some constituents during the break about this bill if it hasn't been voted on yet. And so that would be a reason to have them vote on it now. But also, while people can always change their votes, so more generally, if you have the votes, you might as well vote on. If you're close, you might as well get it passed while it's close, and because things can happen. So, but Friday, the day it would have to be passed today or tomorrow, because Friday they're on recess for 11 days. So we're hearing it might be, and according to Josh Jossi, an administration official says there might be a vote tomorrow night. Well, the administration official said the vote was likely tomorrow night. So we will see. I know the House leadership has said that they won't have a vote unless they think they have the votes. But another thing that was brought up in Sean Spicer's briefing, and that's important here, is so there were a couple of House members who had been on the fence about the bill, and they met with President Trump, and then after the meeting in which they heard about some further compromises in the bill or further adjustments to the bill, they said they were on board. The big one is Upton, I believe. And let me just get you the names, though, of those two. I had the article pulled up here.
Steve, I'm going to go ahead and cut in real quick while we're doing this. I wanted to make the joke that everybody is saying, and I have further established that we are going for the Steve has jaundice look today with the lighting.
All yellow and stuff.
If you could just explain to people what's going on with the lighting, so they really don't think that you're sick and that we need the money to fund your hospital bill.
So we had a bit of an issue in the lighting over the last day or so, and we thought we had it fixed yesterday, and it was when we started doing the pre-show, we realized it was a problem. We didn't really have time between the pre-show and now to fix the lighting. We tried it a little bit, then we were like, well, we want to be able to watch the briefing. So apologies for the lighting. We're going to get that fixed. I do not have jaundice. I know I look kind of yellow to you. So we are working on getting that fixed, and we'll have it fixed for you soon. So I am perfectly healthy, if you're worried. Thank you, Jake, for mentioning that. So the representatives who met with President Trump, they included Fred Upton of Michigan and Billy Long of Missouri. And those two Republicans who had originally come out against the AHCA said after that meeting they were for it. And they also, a big part of their reason that they said we're for it was that there's been this change in the latest version of the bill that $8 billion more is supposed to go toward people with pre-existing conditions, helping them pay their insurance bills. So it's looking to me, at least, as I just tweeted out recently, it just has the feel that the momentum is going the bill's way, and that there really might be a vote on this bill, passing it in the House tomorrow. So I'd love to hear what you think about this healthcare bill stuff that's going on. And if you want to write in, you can write in at @Lookner on Twitter. I'm on Twitter @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Would love to get your thoughts about what's going on with the health bill. Do you think, are you hoping, and by the way, you might hear a little bit of noise in here. Jake is doing an excellent job. He's trying to adjust some lighting right now. So if you notice things shifting around a little bit, that's Jake doing his best to do that. And would like to know, do you hope this bill gets passed by the House? Do you not want to get passed by the House? What are your thoughts? So write in and let me know. And I know somebody wrote me in before, and a couple people have written in, so I want to get to your messages. So Tiger Fan, Deplorable Tiger Fan did write in before the briefing. Deplorable Tiger Fan wrote in, and I want to get this. During the briefing, what about Lynch email saying she would do everything in her power to keep Clinton from being prosecuted? So, what you might be asking about, Deplorable Tiger Fan, is, and I think this is a reference to the James Comey hearings this morning, that I had read an article saying that James Comey had become aware of this document, that it was an email that I think somebody in the Democratic Party or somebody affiliated with the Democrats sent out, questioning whether Loretta Lynch could be objective in the investigation. It wasn't a message from Loretta Lynch, and there was some question as to whether that would be brought up today in the hearing, and I don't have the article right in front of me. I don't know if you said the Lynch email, so maybe you're talking about a different email, or maybe you're talking about the email I read about, but that email was not by Loretta Lynch, it was talking about Loretta Lynch. But I didn't see it. I didn't watch all 4 hours of the hearing. I throughout the hearings, I was kind of going in and out of the hearing, so maybe it was brought up, but I didn't see it mentioned. So, there's still this question. People still talk about the meeting with Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the plane, and what did they really talk about? And there's a lot of different theories on that. And could she really be objective? And was she really trying to help Hillary Clinton in the investigation, or was she staying out of it? We can keep discussing this. So there's different theories out there, but I want to read your email, Deplorable Tiger Fan. If you have more to say on that, feel free to write in. Bonnie Ruth writes in, why does the press pool seem to not understand the simple responses and ask dumb questions? It's so irritating. Well, Bonnie, so one thing I did see today, and I know you guys get really upset when there's like repeated questions or questions that ask the same thing. What was the one today they were asking about a lot? I think it was about the health bill. Yeah, it was like they kept asking about the pre-existing conditions stuff a lot, and it felt like they were kind of repeating the same question. Like, will this bill cover pre-existing conditions? And he would say something, and it's like they would say, and somebody would say, well, but so will it cover everybody with pre-existing conditions? Will they? And I know it's like, I guess they asked the question a bit differently, and it's not the exact same question, but it sort of felt to me like after the first couple times, you kind of knew what Sean Spicer was going to say. So what you might be talking about, Bonnie, is something like that, where it feels like they keep asking a similar question when nothing new is going to be said in response, and it's like, so you get like 6 questions on a topic where you didn't really get anything out of questions 2 through 6 on the topic. So Bonnie, I understand you're upset. Others are upset too, I know. But, on the press is trying to get a different response. Maybe they look, they have the right to ask for another question if a follow-up question if they're not happy with the first response. And also, maybe they hope if they ask it a slightly different way, they'll get a different response. So, but I know that's something that's a number of you don't like in the briefings when you feel you're getting the same question repeatedly. Mid-American writes in, the health care bill is still a joke. I can't support it unless the states have to opt in instead of opt out. Big difference. So, Mid-American, what you're referring to is, in this latest version of the bill, there are a couple parts of Obamacare that the bill doesn't get rid of, but it gives the states the chance to opt out of. So in this bill, for example, it says to the states, hey, Obamacare says all health insurance plans have to cover all these essential benefits. Now, states, you're allowed to not have the insurance in your state do that. Insurance plans in your state don't have to cover all of the essential health benefits of Obamacare, but you have to opt out of it. And similarly, the bill says, hey, states, Obamacare says people with pre-existing conditions can't get charged anymore with people without those conditions. But we're going to let you, the states, get rid of that. You can opt out of that as long as you provide some kind of alternate insurance for people with pre-existing conditions like a high-risk pool or something. So what you're saying, Mid-American, is you think because the way this bill is states have to opt out of these things, you think that not many states will choose to get rid of the pre-existing condition coverage from Obamacare or the essential health benefits from Obamacare. And you think a better bill would be that if the bill said, okay, we're getting rid of essential health benefits requirements and pre-existing conditions requirement, but states can, that those were in Obamacare, but the states can still have those if they opt into them. And you think, Mid-American, the states should have to opt in rather than opt out. Now, perhaps that's something they discussed in the House when they were coming up with this bill. Maybe they just figured that wouldn't get passed. It seems to be, I think the big push now, it seems like from the White House and the House leadership, is to get something passed. And there's this very interesting question as to, now obviously in its current form, this bill would never be passed by the Senate. But how serious a push is this to get a bill ultimately signed into law? Because on one way of thinking, the House just wants to get something passed. They know the Senate's not going to go along with it, and at a certain point they can say, we tried. And people in the House who are voting on this bill now and voting for this bill don't really think the law is ever going to change because they think the Senate won't go along with it, and they're trying to just do something for the sake of doing something. So that's one idea. But there's another school of thought which would say, well, they're passing a bill which the Senate could never pass, but that's just the first step. And the hope is, so they pass their bill, then the Senate passes their bill, which is very different from the House bill, and then the real work starts of bringing the House and the Senate together. And I did see one person on Twitter, I forget who, say earlier today, they said, Democrats think that even if the House passes this bill, it's not going to change the Obamacare law because the Senate will never pass it, and it'll just hurt House members. But this person on Twitter said they should be, people who think that should be careful what they wish for, because, maybe if the House passes their bill, maybe then the Senate passes their bill and they're really different, but maybe at that point there's a little momentum and the compromise can be worked out. So what I don't get right now is how flexible ultimately are these House members and the Senate members if they each pass a bill and it's very different? How flexible can they be when it gets to compromise time? Is there something about, is it possible that if the House passes their bill and the Senate passes their bill, and once that happens, their constituents won't mind as much if they compromise? I don't know. So I can't really say what the chances are of, ultimately this bill becoming law. I find it hard right now, given what House members and what Senate members have said about this current bill to think that any kind of compromise would satisfy enough people to pass. But maybe things change. Maybe the members' calculations change. I don't know. It's worth keeping an eye on.
Steve, I'd like to butt in one more
Oop,
time.
and Jake, I know you're talking, but I can't hear you in my earpiece.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to butt in here, but I just thought maybe you'd like to laugh because they're speaking of coverage of healthcare and everything. Dean H. in the chat room said that Steve has a pre-existing lighting condition.
Yes, I do. I have hopefully my insurance covers it. I'm going to have to go in and get that treated very soon. So thank you, Dean H., for saying that. Apologies for that. Again, we will get the lighting fixed soon. It won't be during this broadcast, but it'll be soon. Let's see. SH7401 says, reporters during the briefing spent 5 minutes or so arguing whether or not the wall was ... a wall. So this is when Sean Spicer was showing some pictures and explaining that in the current spending bill, it did allow, and this is similar to something Mike Mulvaney, is it Mick Mulvaney? Is it Mike Mulvaney, or is it both Mike and Mick? And Mick is the nickname. I think it's Mick Mulvaney. So, but during the briefing yesterday and during the briefing today, Sean Spicer and Mick Mulvaney said that in the current spending bill that was that's going to be presumably passed soon this week, so the government doesn't shut down, while there's no money for a new wall, there is money to rebuild and strengthen existing walls. And so we've seen these photos the last couple days of like this big wall, which is see-through, but it's still much bigger, that will be replacing like fencing that's in existence now. So, but when he did this, it did take a while in SH7401, because like he was saying, well, it's this wall is called a something wall, and somebody else said there was this back and forth about the names of these things, and you were saying SH7401 that it didn't really, you didn't find this back and forth between him and the press kept asking about it. The press kept asking about it. You found this wasn't very enlightening, and I'm guessing SH7401, you thought the briefing would have been better off without it. So, you know, again, I'll chalk you up as another vote for a frustrated viewer of the press briefings. Bonnie Ruth said, I was getting frustrated with how they were asking about the wall and not understanding what Sean was saying. Okay, so that's a specific thing. Yeah, I think I can't remember the exact thing, but like I think Sean Spicer called something a blankety blank wall, which is the name of it. And they were like, well, that's not a wall. And he's like, well, this is what it's called. And it kept going back and forth. So SH7401 and Bonnie Ruth, you were both not pleased with that part of the discussion. Okay, this is the post show for the Sean Spicer press briefing. I know I look a little yellow. Everything's fine. We're just having a little bit of a lighting issue in here today. It'll get fixed soon. We're taking your comments about what happened in the press briefing, your thoughts. If you'd like to write in and talk about any of the issues that Sean Spicer discussed or any of the big issues in the news happening today, you can write to me at Twitter at Lookner at Lookner, or direct message me at or email me at steve.lookner@rspn.tv. I should say also, if you enjoy our coverage and you enjoy that we have pre-coverage and post-coverage of the briefings, also, for example, tomorrow night, if there is a vote on this health bill, we will cover that. We will definitely cover that for you. So if you enjoy our coverage, if you enjoy that we give you an alternative to the mainstream media, I hope you consider donating to us, because your donations keep us on the air. That you're our main source of funding for this channel. And we really, we couldn't be on the air without you. So if you'd like to donate, you can go to rsbn.tv/donate. That's rsbn.tv/donate. Or if you'd like to give a monthly donation and get neat free stuff in return from RightSide, you can go to www.patreon.com/rsbn. We just this morning, you can see this on our Twitter account at RSB Network. We just this morning posted a tweet about we set up the donor wall of fame, because one of the levels of donations on Patreon is one where you get your name on our wall in the office. So we just put that up this morning. And finally, a very easy way to donate is you can just click on the $ at the bottom of the chat on YouTube, the chat room next to this broadcast. Thank you to the moderators for moderating the chat today. Much appreciated. Okay, let me just pull up my email here and see what's going on there. make sure I got all your messages taken care of. Then I want to talk about some things that Sean Spicer actually talked about in his briefing. Now I have to get to my notes. So one thing Spicer said that I thought was worth mentioning again. He said President Trump is on the phone constantly to get votes for health care bill, but he'll also leave it to the House GOP leaders to schedule the vote. So Sean Spicer was getting a number of questions as to when this vote would be, and he said, well, it's up to the House leadership. It's not up to President Trump, and President Trump's going to let the House leadership decide. But there does, Sean Spicer saying President Trump is on the phone constantly. It shows that President Trump does seem to be really personally involved, putting a lot of time in to try to get this health care bill passed. As I mentioned before, he met with a couple of important House leaders today who were on the fence about this bill, and after the meeting, they came out and they said they were going to vote for it. And he's been on the phone, as Sean Spicer said, so he's really investing himself time-wise into getting this bill passed. Sean Spicer also said, at the beginning of the briefing, there were some questions related to President Trump's tweets, which we talked about in the pre-show. And to remind you, let me just remind you, I'll read it. I'll read that tweet. There's 2 tweets he sent out last night. And these were they were tweets in the aftermath of Hillary Clinton's interview yesterday. And President Trump said, FBI director, because Hillary Clinton basically blamed Comey and WikiLeaks for making her lose the election. And Donald Trump said, FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton in that he gave her a free pass for many bad deeds. So Sean Spicer in his briefing said, because he was asked some questions about this, I think, so he was asked about Hillary Clinton's, and I can't remember what the exact question was, but what he did say is he was asked about her comments, Hillary Clinton comments on why she lost the election, and she was blaming it seemed, on, she said she was at fault, but then she also said she would have won if Comey and WikiLeaks hadn't come out and done what they did 10 days before the election. And Sean Spicer said, I think it's somewhat sad we're still debating why the president won. That's what he said about that. And now in that tweet, as I just read, President Trump said, that Comey let some stuff Hillary did slide, and so Sean Spicer got asked about, does that mean that President Trump wasn't approving of Jim Comey? And Sean Spicer said President Trump has confidence in Director Comey. So he said that, but he said that when President Trump was tweeting yesterday, this was a response to Hillary Clinton on Comey's actions. What Hillary Clinton was saying, it wasn't meant to show that he didn't have confidence in Director Comey. Let's see here. A couple more things I want to mention about the briefing, but I want to check real quick. Again, if you would like to write in, would like to hear your thoughts on any of these issues we're talking about today, any of the big issues in the news, any of the issues Sean Spicer talked about, and the health bill. Do you think it'll be voted on tomorrow? Do you think it'll pass? Are you okay with that, or are you not okay with that? Write me at @Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Deplorable Tiger Fan writes in, Tiger Fan at RSBN Forum. That's you. I guess that's your name there. Good. Thank you for letting me know. Here is. Oh wait, maybe you're writing. I think you're saying you're a Tiger Fan at RSBN Forum. You say, here is the statement from the Comey testimony I was referring to. Doesn't say if it was from Lynch or not. And you have Charles Grassley, Senator Charles Grassley, during the testimony said, okay, moving on to another subject, the New York Times recently reported that the FBI had found a troubling email among the ones the Russians had hacked from Democratic operatives. The email reportedly provided assurances that Attorney General Lynch would protect Secretary Clinton by making sure the investigation didn't go too far. Yeah, that was the email I was talking about, the document I was talking about, and actually that was the story I was talking about earlier, Deplorable Tiger Fan. So, okay, so this came up during the briefing. How and when did you first learn of this document, said Grassley. Also, who sent it and who received it? And then Comey said, that's not a question I can answer in this forum, Mr. Chairman, because it would call for a classified response. I have briefed the leadership of the intelligence committees on that particular issue, but I can't talk about it here. Okay, that's really helpful, Deplorable Tiger Fan. Thank you so much for sending it in. So this document was brought up during the hearings briefly, but Director Comey said he could not talk about it. So thank you, Deplorable Tiger Fan. Okay, a couple of other items from the briefing I wanted to get to that Sean Spicer said. Okay, so Sean Spicer, he was asked about what he was talking a bit about President Trump meeting with Palestinian Authority President Abbas today, and he said that during their meeting, the president raised with Abbas payments to Palestinian prisoners in Israel jails who incited terror acts. So I've seen reports about this, that there is this policy that the Palestinian Authority will pay. I saw reports this morning that the Palestinian Authority sometimes pays families of people who commit certain acts against Israel, certain terror acts, and the Palestinian. Now, I'm not an expert on all this stuff, and I do know that the Palestinians have a certain view on why they do this, but I hadn't heard about this issue of the supposed payments to Palestinian prisoners who've incited the terror acts. But Sean Spicer did say that the president raised that issue with Mahmoud Abbas today. That goes on my list of things I need to read up more about. When Sean Spicer was asked in the briefing if President Trump shared the assessment that of the FBI, and this is what Comey said in his hearings today, in his testimony today, that the Russians, he was asked if he shared the assessment about the Russian hacking continued involvement in U.S. politics, that the Russians hacked into the election, were hacking to help Hillary Clinton in the election, and that kind of thing. Spicer said that's the view of the FBI, which suggests that President Trump doesn't necessarily agree with the FBI on its assessment of the Russian involvement, both in the election and the continued involvement in U.S. politics, hacking-wise. So those were some points I thought that were worth mentioning that came up with Sean Spicer. Okay, we're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes here. I want to get to some more of your messages that are still coming in. Hold on one second. As soon as I can open them, I will read them. Norway for Trump says, all right, Norway, this looks like it's a private message, so I will read this, Norway. I'm going to read it. I just skimmed it over, Norway. My assessment is that this is a private message, so I won't read it on the air, but I will definitely read it as soon as I get off the air. Mid-American writes in, Comey doubling down on the irrelevant intent of breaking a law opens the floodgates for all defendants to claim the same. So what you're talking about is Comey said that they weren't going to prosecute Huma Abedin, even though she might have broken the letter of the law by forwarding classified emails to Anthony Weiner, because she didn't have intent to break the law, and you have problems with that because you're saying that's something that criminals could hide behind. Now, perhaps Comey might say, well, in this specific law, it's always been understood that intent matters, but maybe not in other laws. So there's a whole big argument we get to here, but that does bother you, Mid-American, that idea that intent would matter so much, and that it's something that criminals could hide behind. And it seemed to bother Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz was putting forth this argument, as I understood him, that look, if you're in a position where you should know the law and should know what would be breaking the law, then your intent shouldn't matter anymore. So, Ted Cruz asked James Comey, what would you do if somebody in the FBI who should know better releases information, even if it released classified information, even if they didn't intend to break the law? And what Comey said is, well, they would be very heavily internally disciplined, but he suggested they wouldn't be prosecuted. So it's an interesting point you raised, Mid-American. Thank you. And Mid-American, you also say, to add to your last point, you say, quote, I didn't mean to crash into a van full of kids. I'm just drunk and didn't know I was going to hurt someone. So you believe that intent shouldn't matter in a case like the case of Huma Abedin. Thank you, Mid-American, for writing in. And Andrew Sova says, it's really strange. I click on your video for RSBN, but as it gets going, it turned out to be another channel. Well, Andrew, please send the link so we can know which link that is. I had not heard of that issue today. Okay, we're going to wrap it up here. We need to wrap it up, so we're going to do so.
Steve, before we wrap it up, I actually have kind of a fun thing I'd like to do. I've collected some of the funny remarks that some of the people in the chat room that are regulars have made about you today. So
okay, Jake, before you do that, because I'd love to hear them, there's one more email I hadn't gotten to yet, so let me read that email and then we will go to the remarks, all right?
All right.
All right, so last email I'm reading because I didn't want to skip it over. June Vendetti wrote in, "Hi Steve, I'm not buying James Comey's explanations concerning Hillary's emails. From last July when he indicated there would be no prosecution, even though there was plenty of evidence, and yet there was still more investigation to be done. His stance on the issue has been one of concealing on behalf of Hillary. So June, you feel that James Comey is on Hillary's side in this and that he's been he's been concealing, or I guess you would say protecting her. I think that would be a way to put your argument. So June, appreciate you writing in. Thank you. Now, we're going to go to Jake. And Jake, you said that you have a bunch of comments people have been saying in the chat room about the way I look because our lighting is having a bit of an issue today, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We know that, there's a lot of news organizations that they like to have fun sometimes and cut up, so I thought we'd take a minute. Basically, this game is we're looking and hoping for the comment that makes you laugh the most.
They're going to all make me sad.
Yes, as a former comedy writer, Steve actually doesn't have much of a big laugh. He doesn't exert a lot of laughter, but he does smile a lot. So let's see if we can get him to
these are
smile.
All make me sad.
No, I think you're going to enjoy them. I think so, yes. So Marjorie said Sponge Steve SquarePants, which is one of my favorites. I like that a lot. Mike said Old Yeller.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Dean H. said Crayola launching a new color, Yellow Lookner.
Good. These are all good so far.
I came up with the Coldplay tune, Well, Steve was all yellow.
Wow. By the way, Jake, way to just sing copyrighted music on the air that we
Oh, I know, right?
$100,000 for. But I think you were a little off key, so they won't catch
I'm always off key. That's why I play guitar. D.W. Bigley said Steve is so bright. I love the dry humor. Jacqueline said the Tubby Sun Baby, which is the baby from the Teletubbies.
Nice.
Yes, good. Mike said the Yellow Rose of Texas is the only girl for me.
Wow.
Fantastic. Dean H. also said reports of cell phone irradiation no longer fake news. DW, Steve is the spokesperson for Sun-Kissed Lemons. John PS30, Steve is such a mellow yellow.
Wow.
And the last one, Marjorie said, Russia hacked RSBN's lighting.
Nice.
There we go.
Those are very good. I like that they provoked such creativity and discussion among our audience. So, but I also would like to get it fixed. So thank you all for writing in. Thank you for writing in. Thank you for watching. Thank you to the moderators for moderating the chat. Thank you to Jake Seals for producing. Thank you to who else? I don't know. Feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell when you subscribe to get all the notifications about our videos. On Twitter, follow us on Twitter at RSB Network. Follow me at Lookner, Lookner. Follow Jake Seals at Jacob RSBN Music. Hey Jacob, any update on when your concert's going to be?
It's going to be this Saturday.
It is going to be this Saturday. So if people are interested in that, it's for Patreon subscribers. So of a certain level. So if you want to know about Jake's concert, go to www.patreon.com/RSBN. And also you can, again, if you'd like to donate to Right Side, because you keep us on the air, rsbn.tv/donate, or the Patreon address I just gave, or click on the $ at the bottom of the chat room. At the chat, really appreciate all your donations. And I think that's it for today. So tonight is Nick on, Jake? Do we know? Nick Fuentes, 8 p.m. America First with Nick Fuentes is at 8 tonight, so you can watch that. And we will, if there's breaking news, we will come back and cover it for you. But also, again, if there is this House vote tomorrow or tomorrow night or whenever on the American Health Care Act, the replacement for Obamacare, we will definitely come on and bring you coverage of that. And also Sunday, probably around noon or 1 Eastern, we will have coverage of the French election. So anyways, thank you for joining us for our coverage of the Sean Spicer press briefing. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon.